morning. Quentin Jiles, political analyst and host of the podcast The Q with Q, is with me now to talk about the latest on the trial. Quentin, welcome back to BNC. I'm glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And so, Quentin, today in court, Derek Chauvin's defense attorney said he is, quote, gravely concerned about the amounts of pretrial publicity in the case and asked for a delay in the trial after the $27 million settlement for the Floyd family. Is there any reason to suspect that a juror cannot be impartial after that settlement?
Yeah. There's always reason to suspect that jurors won't be impartial, but this settlement coming at this time in the middle of jury selection does give credence to the defense to make that argument. It's kind of astonishing that the murder of George Floyd happened last year, and so the city council would choose right now of all times to go ahead and approve this when they could have approved it at any time or even waited until after the criminal trial had concluded. And so will they have all impartial jurors? One would hope so in a court of law, but I definitely believe that this move gives the defense an argument.
Do you think this was an attempt to kind of change the outcome?
You know, I don't think so. I think the city council of Minneapolis and particularly their mayor have been very vocal on the forefront of wanting to change policing in that city, addressing systemic oppression and suppression by those that are charged to keep us safe, that we fund via our tax dollars. And I think it was meant to send a message that we are with you and we stand with you. However, timing is absolutely everything. And I think it was a missed calculation in the time that they chose to do this.
And you think back to November when there was changes to this and they asked a little bit about moving the trial out of Minneapolis. Why was that request actually rejected?
Well, because that's where the crime took place. And so that is where the trial should happen. That is where a group of your peers should be chosen from, where you are and where the crime took place. And so the judge made a right call in not moving it out of Minneapolis, not to go get one could argue, a more favorable or more white jury, although we see 5 out of the 9 jurors currently are white. Which has a lot of activists on the ground very upset about that. But the right call was made to keep that trial right where it is.
And so the judge is actually considering bringing back the seven jurors who were seated last week to question them about the exposure to the news of the $27 million settlement. Do you think that would ultimately mean striking those jurors out and picking new ones?
Potentially. We've kind of seen that already happen with a Hispanic woman who was going to be a juror that the defense struck out. She was having some issues with understanding the questions and answered in a way that the defense was not comfortable with. And so when you look strictly from the defense's side of Derek Chauvin, they are looking, as the legal analyst mentioned in the opening block, they are looking for the most impartial people that they can find. Someone who is open to still hearing the evidence and whatever the defense they mount. But definitely I see, depending on the answers that the jurors get, some of them could be stricken from the jury pool.
So, Quentin, what do we know so far about the 9 jurors today? We're getting to 9. Of course, we left off at 7 last week. What do we know about those who have been selected so far?
Really, we just kind of know a racial makeup. We don't know the names or anything like that. We do know 5 of them identify as white. Someone identifies as multiracial. I believe one person identifies as black and another identifies as Hispanic descent or Spanish descent. And so that's really, we just know the racial makeup of the jury. And that's really it. Several arguments could be made that the jury is still not made up of a racial equity to seriously consider the charge, seeing as how 5 of them are white. Not to say that white people can't be fair and impartial jurors, but specifically in this case where we have a white cop and a black man and the situation unfolded the way it did, one would think that the jury makeup would be a little more reflective of what that community looks like.
Do you think that ultimately has an impact on what the outcome will look like for this trial?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not calling it heads or tails because you never know. I've learned long ago not to make predictions, specifically in criminal court cases like this. But the racial makeup is absolutely going to be a determining factor because that means each of these individual people have a lived experience. And what we also know based on racial groups, some of us have shared racial experiences. And so that could either play to or against Derek Chauvin in his trial.
And what do you expect going into tomorrow? You know, you talk about us being at 9, they have to get 12. They also need 14, and you talk about the 2 alternates. I mean, we're already more than halfway through, and there was more time allotted for jury selection alone.
Yeah, I'm looking, well, really, I'm waiting to see what the judge is going to say about this continuance. That's really what I'm looking towards. He did make some comments that suggested he is sympathetic to the defense right now, and that argument that jury selection should be paused. And no matter where you fall on it, if we're just looking from a court of law perspective being non-biased, there is a legitimate argument there. So I'm actually going to be looking at what the judge decides to do if he decides to, you know, keep going with the trial or say, let's hold off. I think it's also important to note that he mentioned the city council and in a rare type of statement said, I wish they would stop talking about it. So that kind of gives me what I need to know right there.
And Quentin, you're a defense attorney in this case. Are you hoping for a mistrial?
Well, no, I'm not a defense attorney.
No, I know you're not. We're saying, hypothetically speaking, you're a defense attorney in this trial. Speaking from your perspective, would you be hoping for a mistrial?
Yeah. Oh, if I was a defense attorney in this trial, absolutely, because that would be a win for the client, right now being Derek Chauvin. So any way the defense can either get a not guilty verdict or a mistrial is still a win because his client gets to go home.
All right, QuentinRJiles, thank you so much for your insight tonight.
Thank you.